Right, Thronefall has finally done an update, and being your typical dad, I am massively late to the party. The update dropped yesterday on the 29th. It's now the 30th today. And this one's called the Uferwind or Uferwind update or one of those. We're just going to call it the U update from now on because I think I've butchered all of the ways that was supposed to be pronounced. So let's just run through this. I have actually had a chance to play this on the Steam Deck, so the new map. And it is quite cool. It's definitely different from the other ones, so that's good to see. So we'll just quickly run through this. So the U map, so that's what we're going to call it. We added a completely new map to Thronefall with its rugged shoreline to one side and vast open grasslands to the other. It offers a challenge unlike any other map right from the start, and you have quite a bit of gold and many building options on your hand, allowing you to explore a variety of different approaches. So that's cool. The new weapon, the lightning staff, so that's come out. I'm not going to read all this word for word, but the lightning staff's quite cool. Didn't see it do significant amount of damage, but it is at least unique and different in comparison to the other 3 different weapons that you can have. Definitely think there is some skill to be had around its second ability, where you kind of sort of drop a bomb. Quite hard from my first gameplay trying to sort of line that up with enemies where you think that they're gonna sort of walk all over it and they don't, but it does cause some nice damage, so that's cool. So new enemies, then your encounter, so 2 new airborne, 2 new ground units, definitely saw those, they were cool. Shame that those aren't going to be incorporated into the old map and in the new one, but that's probably by design. Hero units then, so you get a new structure for heroes. When you start out the game on level 47, at least for me, there was only 2 that were available, so I tried the big sort of tanky unit, which was quite cool, which was different. So it'd be interesting to see what the other 2 heroes are like, and also the third one, because I haven't tried that yet. New perks and mutators, so there's 5 new perks, 5 new mutators, and there's 1 that's available from the beginning that kind of reduces your score, gives you a nice little sort of a debuff on the enemies to make life a bit easier, so that's cool. But then let's just go through the balancing changes then. So Berserker is still 100% damage to siege weapons, up from 50%. Nice. I don't use Berserkers, never have. Didn't think they were that useful, but the health's been increased also from 50 to 65. This may be enough. And as I'll say with all of this, we'll have to test it all to see what it's like, but I don't think that that's enough of a buff just from the numbers. So if you think about big armies that spawn, siege weapons usually at the back. Towers do a pretty good job. The ballista tower does a pretty good job of getting rid of those. So, you know, to take up an infantry slot, especially from knights, knights are quite good, and we can see a buff already to those in a second that we'll see. Take that away, just to have berserkers in. You know, most of the time they're probably going to die before they even reach the siege. But again, we'll have to see. But nothing too big to shout about there for berserks. Knights get an increased movement speed, which is nice. Didn't think they really needed one, to be honest. Yeah, they took a little while to move around. You know, before you obviously start the next wave, but that's just a nice slight increased buff there for their movement. You longbowmen now prefer targeting air units and have a 50 range when attacking air units, up from 40. I mean, it's just cool. It's a nice buff for longbowmen against air. To be honest, never really had an issue with it. And again, as you get in late into the game, really difficult to try and pick some of the other archers so far over the fire archers. They're so good. Lots of different things have been nerfed in this from casting my eye over it, but fire archers weren't one of them, which was quite interesting. So that's it for the archer group. Into the perks then. So castle blueprints increase his health of towers and walls by 70%, down from 100%. So this is a shame. You know, on its own, I think, yes, 100% is quite a lot. I suppose biasly, I'm looking at it now from a challenge of a mutation perspective. So, you know, the 4 mutations runs to me are quite important in terms of being able to really push and challenge myself specifically. I think this perk will still be fine when you're fairly new and you're doing normal runs, but it is a hit, and it's even harder to justify this now for a mutations run, which is a shame. So I think the 30% there will definitely be noticed. Royal Mint no longer gives you an additional gold at the beginning of the match, so this is a nerf to our Northfelds run that we just recently did. Link below in the description if you want to check it out, where we were able to beat Nordfells with all mutations. So this is a definite nerf to Royal Mint, which is a bit of a shame. So you don't get that additional gold. Not the end of the world, to be honest, but was definitely a nice little buff. It's going to be the difference now between, on Northfelds, I think you could get, say, like 2 houses. Maybe you're only going to get 1 now, or can't remember the specifics, but it will leave you on an odd number if I remember rightly. So this is definitely a nerf. Pumpkin Fields effects replaced. So fields have 400% health and every meal gives you an income of 1. So if I remember rightly, Pumpkin Fields had an increase to the amount that they cost. So they've got rid of the initial cost, but they have reduced the health from 900%, if I remember rightly. So from when we did our tier list, and again, that'll be linked below in the description if you want to check it out. That's going to need to change now. The fields were at 900% health. I think that overall it is a buff, obviously, to get that, but it is a shame that the health got nerfed with it as well. Would have liked to have seen that not to be so big, given that you can't pick where fields are and they're very vulnerable. So, you know, but at the end, I think, you know, if they're going to get attacked and destroyed, you know, 400% health versus 900% health is not really that big a deal. If they're gonna get destroyed, they're gonna get destroyed. The Gladiator School perk only increases the cost of upgrades, but no longer the initial build cost of the training facility. This is big. This is a buff. Trying to get Gladiator in could be quite difficult, especially because of that increased cost. So this is a nice buff. So we'll appreciate that. Warhorse damage is reduced by 10%. Interesting. I actually had this one quite low on the tier list. Didn't really think it was that good. So let me know if you used Warhorse and found it useful. I tried it a couple of times. Maybe it just, you know, everything is on a back burner when you're doing a full mutations run. But Warhorse for that was not that great. So shame to see it's gone down even further. Definitely won't be using Warhorse anytime soon, that's for sure. Heavy armor health only increases health by 250%, down from 350. So that is, again, another big nerf to our Nordfell's run that we did with all mutations, which is still very good, no worries. In return, picking this perk no longer slows down the player. Again, I don't think this was really that big of a negative. You can still kind of sprint when you're not in combat for like a second or two. So if you're like running from like one side of the map. So I didn't really notice this slowdown. I don't, you know, them sort of mentioning this is to make the perk more fun to play and to counteract some crazy combo builds with magic armor. I mean, that's fair. Magic armor is extremely strong, combined with heavy armor. I absolutely can see why they would have wanted to look at that. And it was definitely really good in our run. When we did a full mutations run on Nordfell, this was strong. So these two together synergize really well. But I don't really think anyone cared about the slowdown, to be honest. So that is an overall nerf. I mean, 250% is still good, but it is going to be noticeable. But it's a shame because this is only really useful for one character. So even the new lightning character that they brought out, I think it's hard to justify having heavy armor on any other character apart from the spear. So we'll have to check that out though. Commander mode ally damage reduced from 45% to 40. Okay, small nerf there then. Warrior mode ally damage increased from 40% to minus 30%. Maximum player damage increased from 160 to 175. Okay, I mean, shame, because I think warrior mode, especially at the high levels, is a little bit hard to justify fitting in a build for a perk, but that seems like that's had a nerf. I think. Why is that a buff? Warrior mode all damage increase for, yeah, a maximum player damage. Okay, so warrior ally increase. Okay, so I think it is a buff. Sorry, it's a buff. It's not a nerf. It was a buff. But I don't think it's that great anyway, because the damage, if I remember rightly, comes from the later waves. I'd have to check the tooltip on that, but I'm pretty sure it's the later waves. Kind of build up to this massive 175%. It's not sort of from the first wave. So again, it's kind of like a ramping damage, but the ally damage is static. But I have to check that one. Interesting. Okay. Blast cannon damage decreased from 100% to 80%. Again, was quite good with bow. Shame that that's gone down a little bit, but I can kind of see why. I assume the negative is still there, so they haven't said anything in there. So I think you take a lot more damage as well. So it would have been nice to have adjusted the amount of damage you received to sort of counterbalance the damage increase you're doing, but maybe they felt that it was literally just the damage that needed nerfing. Fortified houses now also shoot arrows when the house is still on level 1. So this one If you've checked out my tier list, you'll know that I wasn't a big fan of this. It doesn't have a very big range. And so although it's nice that the fortified houses will attack at level 1, I still think it's bad. Not a good perk. Definitely needs bigger range. I said in the perk list that when units are attacking, say, a town hall and you've got some houses around it, the houses don't engage from what I've seen. So, and to be honest, by the time something hits a house, fortified houses is just not going to do that much damage. But again, this is looking from a mutations perspective, so there may be some value in this yet, but I don't think so. Elite Warriors give 8% health for all of your infantry units down from 100. That's a shame. Elite Warriors was good. So I was testing this out on the ice map to try and do a full mutations run, and this very much was one that I was using to try and tackle it, so that's going to make that even harder now. A treasure hunter gives 60 plus gold before the last wave, up from 50. I mean, look, if you're struggling on the last wave, specifically when you're adding a few mutations or when you're doing your first one, this is going to be great. But I think overall, the fact you have to wait until the last round and it gives you absolutely nothing in between when the maximum amount of perks is free, really, really hard to justify this perk at the moment from my perspective. So that's not going to be enough to entice me, that's for sure. I think that's it for the perks then. So the castle upgrade, Builders Guild upgrade at houses for the night instead of after the night, so you effectively gain +1 income from it every day, so that's good. That's a buff. Assassin's Training changes from the last patch to revert. It only gives 100% attack damage down from 250, and if you manage to use your active ability just as the cooldown wears off, the cooldown is reduced by 50%. It should feel a bit smoother to use now. The challenge comes less from hitting your timely perfectly and more from making sure you get some good use out of your ability. Now, again, especially for these mutation runs, don't see us using any other upgrade apart from houses. It's just too good. So being quite difficult to sort of branch out to those farms. Don't see myself using any upgrades. So although this seems nice on paper, won't be one that I'll really be entertaining. But also had a trial of it in the new map and didn't really see this cooldown that is mentioned here, this cooldown interaction. So could be me. Might have to test that a little bit more, but didn't see a big impact there. Mills, so Scarecrow attack frequency reduced from shooting every 2.5 seconds to every 3 seconds. So, I mean, did it really... So, frequency reduced from shooting every 2... Did it need a nerf? Did try Scarecrow once. Very, very situational. Very, very hard to justify any of these upgrades over the increased money as well. Really hard. And I don't think that means necessarily that the gold maybe needs a nerf. It's just the fact that because your mills are placed so far out and it takes some time to accumulate a good interest from them, to just not invest in the fields is just sacrilege. But that being nerfed is just literally just going to put you off Scarecrow even more. Exploding mills deal 50% more damage usually on level 1, 26 to 39. I mean, nice buff. We'll have to test it, but I think, you know, you're trying your best every single run not to let your mills blow up. So to go out of your way and try and use mills as an offensive, I find this really hard to choose this and have that play style where you're happy for your mills to get destroyed. To do some damage could be quite useful. I'd have to try it out, see just how good the damage really is, but if I'm at the point where I'm allowing my mills to get destroyed, then the investment versus what I'm getting back on it is big sacrilege. So hard to justify this one. And then the last one, the Wind Spirit upgrade blocks significantly more arrows on the lower mill levels than before, and also has a new bonus effect. The mill and its surrounding fields receive the armored against range tag, which makes them take reduced damage from all range tag. I mean, I didn't know if range was really the problem, to be honest, when it comes to mills. If you're in the way or your units are there, they kind of make, for specifically range units, it just aggroes them immediately. So, and if melee units are going to hit your mills, they're going to die. Like, you're going to lose them. So it's interesting that they've specifically gone for ranged resistance rather than just both. I think both would have been nice here, and it would have given us more reason to know that this specific upgrade was going to help protect the mills a lot more so that we don't always take money, especially from a mutations run. But let me know what your thoughts are on this, guys, because I'd be really interested to know, because that's very controversial in my opinion in terms of how I feel. I'm very conflicted about how I feel about all these upgrades, but I think just going forward, I'm just going to keep going for the money one, especially when I'm doing tough runs. I wouldn't pick these other three, to be honest. So these are the weapons then. So spear deals 10% less damage against all enemies except fast enemies. Fast enemies damage is adjusted by an equal amount in the opposite direction, so plus 10%. This should help make the spear more situational. Does this mean that if I'm behind them and I hit them, I then get my 10% back? Interesting. It seems like they're trying to nerf it, because, you know, spear is pretty good. I wouldn't say that it was really, really good for the damage. It's just when you pair it with some of the other perks that we've mentioned earlier, like heavy armor and magic armor and that, it just made it really good. But I wouldn't say that we were there for just the damage alone, but that will be noticed. So that is another nerf to the Northfields run that we did. Bow and dagger or attack fire rate increased by 5%. The maximum cooldown time of the stab is lowered by 7.56, and the damage against foes is increased by 20%, and ranged enemies by 25%. All in all, pretty heavy buffs while we intentionally want to move. Okay. I mean, this might actually be potentially more useful now than spear with all the nerfs that have happened. So, you know, to them, obviously buffing it for beginner players is great. In my humble opinion, I'll have to test the new one more. I think the sword one's absolutely rubbish unless someone's had a combination that I've not figured out yet. Spear was my favourite by far, and then bow and dagger was probably second. So the fact that it's just getting a buff just basically raises its stock in terms of whether I'll use it more. Enemy units then. So the weapon of the weakling has been changed to a club, so it's easier to visually distinguish from a melee enemy, which is great. And then I have already read through some of these bug fixes and have not come across any of those. So if any of you's experienced it, feel free to let us know. I'd be interested to see what situation that happened in, but it didn't happen for me. So nice to see that they're fixing bugs. Definitely lots of changes. We knew it was going to come. It's good to see that they're updating it. Big thanks to Paul and Jonas for working on the game. The new map is nice, definitely unique, so that's cool. And you know, we were going to expect changes, so I will probably have to review the tier list. Again, I'm very much looking at this now from it's really easy to complete it at a base level, especially at the level that I'm at now. And again, you know, every time a new map comes out, pretty much going to be able to play it with some sort of existing perk or, you know, loadout that's going to make it fairly easy to run through. So you will expect a lot of my opinions to be based around mutation runs rather than just a vanilla run. But let me know your thoughts, and yeah, good to see them updating it, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.